Good afternoon and welcome to Rec Tech. This week's guest speaker is Aaron Hurst. He's a former CEO of Imperative.com. He worked there for 9 years, and he's also written the book called The Purpose Economy. We're actually going to ask Aaron today about both the purpose idea and imperative as part of my learner's education. So also ask you, Aaron, if you can tell something about yourself that we couldn't read on LinkedIn, please.
Great to be here with you, Chris. What is one thing? So many different things. Don't even know where to begin. But fun fact is, when I was born, we were living in Aspen, Colorado, and we were neighbors of Hunter S. Thompson, like literal next door neighbors of Hunter S. Thompson, which was I was too young to appreciate, but apparently some wild interactions.
Cool. Okay, well, let's just get right into it today. So I wanted to talk to you. I'm not sure if you are aware, I've actually we're starting to trial some of the software, or we haven't trialed it yet, but we had a sales call last week with one of the people from Imperative, and we've done the purpose survey.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting. It's just at interest, is that your emoticon or your avatar that's there at the very end when you've finished your survey?
Yes, yes, it is.
It does look like you, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's I hired a cartoonist in Brooklyn. It was actually the guy who illustrated my book, and used a lot of his graphics just to humanize the tech experience.
Cool. So how you came to starting Imperative, and the idea of coaching and AI, and that's some of the stuff we teach on our course. So it'd be interesting for our learners to hear.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I've been a social entrepreneur my whole career. I'm sort of focused on how do you use the spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation to actually help address societal issues. My first major organization was called the Taproot Foundation, which I started back in 2001, which was a global movement around taking the pro bono ethic from the legal profession and bringing it to marketing and tech and HR and finance and these other professions that nonprofits need that pro bono support as much as they need legal support, if not more, and scaled that around the world. And one of the things that really struck me as I was interviewing, surveying the thousands of people doing pro bono work was that the reason people said they did pro bono work, first and foremost, was that their jobs weren't fulfilling. And they were looking for a way to address the lack of fulfillment in their careers. And it really struck me that it was great that we were able to provide that, but we were providing a supplement or a vitamin to make up for people eating at McDonald's. And we were actually in some ways making it okay to eat at McDonald's because you got your supplement. You talk to CEOs and they'd be like, well, I'd be like, well, what kind of work do you do to help bring fulfillment and purpose to your employees? And like, volunteering. I'm like, that's great, like, but that's not your work. Like, what about the other 50 hours a week that people are working? And really caused me to want to shift my thinking, especially with some new research from Amy Resniewski out of Yale and Michigan, that showed sort of the path to being able to do what she called job crafting, this ability to be able to take any job and find ways to make it more meaningful through a set of different interventions. So that's inspired me to sort of leave Taproot and start Imperative to try to really think about how do we equip individuals to engage in active job, hacking, crafting, however you want to talk about it, so that they can actually make whatever they do fulfilling. Because what the research shows very clearly is that nothing is inherently meaningful. We as human beings create meaning, and we're making machines. And if we don't actually do the right practices of reflection, even the most quote unquote meaningful job has no meaning. You saving babies all day doesn't actually create meaning unless you reflect on it and store that information. So started Imperative, did a bunch of research with NYU, Michigan, PwC, LinkedIn, these sort of research houses, to try to really understand the science behind purpose and meaning in the workplace, and then figure out how to activate it. And the Imperative platform is really a manifestation of that. There's two sort of main capabilities. One that I know you've seen, which is purpose profiling capabilities. So I was able to look at purpose statements. If you think about the purpose statement you might create with an executive coach, if you actually take hundreds or thousands of those and look at them, while the language may be unique, there's actually psychological preferences that they're articulating. And you can actually predict what someone's purpose is if you actually assess those psychological preferences. And by doing that, you can take purpose from this poetic spiritual realm into a data science realm where you can start to do interesting things with purpose that was never possible on computers before. So the purpose assessment's gone out. It's been used by hundreds of thousands of people to sort of at least start that journey around purpose. And then what we found was, Chris, when people got the results, they were like, whoa, this is amazing. Like we had stories, people just like shut their computer, like, oh my God, this thing, like, this is so creepy. How did it know me so well? But then they're like, now what? And we're like, I don't know. We gave you your purpose. Like, isn't that enough already? And they're like, no, we want more. So we started studying the people who actually started operationalizing their purpose through that job hacking. And what they almost all had in common is that they were collaborating with someone else inside their company, where they were basically doing they're doing peer coaching with each other to talk about the results and over time practice integrating them into their work. And I've always been a huge fan of coaching. I've used coaches throughout my career, and it always struck me that coaching is something that for certain issues is you need a professional coach. It always struck me that for 90% of coaching could be done through peers or technology, because a lot of it's just about creating reflective space. It's not an intervention, and it's not about advice. So what we built was a platform that would intelligently know the purpose of each employee, use that to create algorithms for matching people to the right people inside a company, and then dynamically create coaching guides embedded within the digital coaching experience that were dynamically changed based on previous responses and the purpose of each employee. So you could actually have peers with zero training, like literally zero training, service, I think, better than average coaches for each other.
And so the computer program, as what I know, basically prompts you to ask the questions, the open-ended questions that you then listen to, and then you start engaging with the other person like we're doing here?
Yeah, so I would ask you a question and then you would ask it back. One of the things we found with peer coaching is the importance of reciprocity. So, we each answer a question and move on to the next question, but the questions are dynamically generated. And one of the keys was that if I'm asking you a question, I'm also typing your response into the interface, which is then enables it to feed that data into the system, but also creates a paper trail for you of your experience. But most importantly, it forces active listening, because what we found,
and it feeds back into the whole reflection thing. If you're not going back and going, some people are really good at remembering the reflections they've had, but if some people aren't, I'm guessing is what you're saying too.
Yeah, it's for that. It's for us to build a more intelligent system, and it was also just it forces in the moment active listening.
And is the AI kind of looking at the words you're typing and then changing the question for the next one, or is it already kind of pre-programmed in ahead of time?
It's a mix. So it's a structure, but it's changing now. I mean, the AI technology. I mean, I left Imperative, started the transition about a year ago. So, I mean, the ChatGPT pretty much has emerged since then. So there's been a lot of work in the next generation, which I have not been a part of. At the point in which I did the original design, it was, structure based. So it was able to dynamically change parts of the components, but it wasn't doing anything sort of whole cloth generation.
Is your background in programming, or is it just in more of the softer skill stuff, or what? You obviously hired a team to program it, and
sure, yeah, there's a whole dev team at Imperative that did all the build and took, I mean, over many years sort of building that out and building the data sets. My first job was a front end dev, but it was not in the way you'd expect. It was I hit it off with a woman who had just co-founded a company, got a lot of venture funding. They needed a front end dev to like build out the front end of their system. And she and I hit it off, and she's like, if you can show me one page of HTML, I'll hire you. And this is back in '97. And I literally had one page, which was my resume, that I had taken someone else's resume and swapped out my name. And like, I understood the structure behind it. So I just swapped everything out. She's like, great, you're hired. You're now responsible for like a multi-million-dollar tech startup's front end. And I was like, oh, crap. So it was a very busy weekend getting ready for that job between Friday and Monday, just trying to like learn enough to be able to fake it. But I pretty quickly moved from front end dev to product management.
And just to digress, so back in that day, because I'm probably similar age, is how are you teaching yourself HTML in 1997?
Go to Barnes and Noble and get yourself a book, for one, and then second is I would go to similar websites and platforms to what we were wanting to build, and I would look at the source code.
Right, because you could, still can.
Yeah, and you would just try to understand the structures of like, you look at the page and then you go into the source code and try to sort of figure out how they all connected to each other.
Mm.
And it was a lot of cutting and pasting of source code for things and then just swapping out to customize it to that new company. So it was, didn't have the luxury of learning from scratch. It was much more of a imitate similar sites and figure out how it works. And a lot of it was just understanding at the time, there weren't the effective WYSIWYG editors, like these website builders. So it was all hand coding, and a lot of it was just understanding table structures. You had to learn how to create the table structures to nest the copy and the images like all on a page. And it was interesting. I started dreaming and seeing the world just in nested tables. Like it's you see everything that way. Like look at your face and like, okay, the glasses would have to go into a nested table like this with the nose and then the ears and different level, but that would require this. So it was just it was a constant like game of Tetris trying to figure out how to build these pages. It was really fun, and I'm really glad I didn't do it for very long.
Well, that's something else we probably can't learn from you on your LinkedIn profile. Were there div tags back in that day? Nested tables.
Yeah, I don't, it's been like 25 years. I don't think so. This was like really, really early days. So.
Yeah, I mean, I get the whole I get the whole coaching thing, and the more people I tell about this platform, the more I think I'd like to have it in every company I work in. And but so I guess it kind of ties in nicely with well, just I'll ask you, because we also teach coaching in this course, and wondering what your experience is with coaching before coming to these decisions. Have you been coached yourself? Have you been a coach? Yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I have, it's a bunch of different pieces. So I've used coaches, had some incredible coaches. I've had some terrible coaches. I've had coaches that have stolen my ideas, which was not great. But I've had a lot of great ones. I also would say, and I think about it much more broadly. I think of, I was raised Buddhist, but of Jewish descent. And I think a lot of that actually primed me for a certain way of looking at the world that is a coaching centric perspective, which is about, not giving advice. It's about curiosity and questions. It's about subjective reality. It's about people creating their own path. It's about not being hierarchical by definition. So I think a lot of these fundamental values or ways of seeing the world were embedded in my worldview, just growing up in that kind of family. And then I took a lot of OD classes in college, organizational development. I always tell people when they're young and they're trying to figure out what to do, I'm like, what class did other people find hard that you just thought was like stupidly easy and didn't understand why it was even a class? Because for me, that was OD. Like everything was just like, well, of course that's how you do it. Of course you had it. And then other people didn't have that intuitive answer. I'm like, oh, like I have some kind of intelligence where this lines up well. So I did a lot of teaching. So taught in high school, I've taught in prisons, I've taught in college, taught in companies. So teaching, there's, it's different than coaching, but there's a component that has some similarities to listening. Teaching is about listening first and foremost, even though people think it's about content. And then as a keynote speaker, it's a similar thing. Like you're constantly have to listen and connect with the audience, which I think is a
room. Yeah.
It's just why I generally don't like doing Zoom keynotes, because you just can't read the room, and the energy, you just don't get that energy build. You did that, and then before we launched the Imperative Peer Coaching platform, we experimented with creating a purpose coaching certification where we would train coaches on how to use the purpose profiling technology in their coaching practice. So I had to develop a whole coaching training and certification curriculum, which also taught me a lot about how that works. But the single most helpful resource I had was Chip and Dan Heath's book, The Power of Moments. If people haven't read that, I highly recommend it. It really was the basis for a lot of how we designed the system.
Cool. Tell me more about purpose and what you're doing with your new venture.
Yeah, I mean, this year I've been on sabbatical because I just need a break after being founder CEO for 20 plus years and just a little burnt out, to be candid. Even though I was working on coaching, it doesn't mean that I was listening to myself in terms of what I should be doing all the time. So I've actually got a number of different ventures that I'm working on. One I'm excited about is we're placing tech execs on nonprofit boards. There's a huge digital divide between the corporate and nonprofit sector, and nonprofits just don't have access to senior tech talent consistently. So we're working with leading tech companies to place their execs on boards. which is sort of an opportunity for them to give, but also learn by being in a different context. So really excited about that work. Partnering with a company in Latin America to create leadership programs built off of my IP for Latin America. So that's been just exciting to work in a different cultural context and help do that. I've started up I realized that I loved this building a digital coaching platform, but it actually didn't give me a lot of joy because I never saw the impact. Because everybody was like so far removed. So I just sort of had this aha this summer of like, I want to actually, on a small scale, do more actual sort of work with people. So I've started up a retreat company for weekend retreats where you can't come alone. You have to come with a friend, a sibling, or a spouse and do this purpose transformation work over the course of a weekend with them so that you strengthen that relationship. So that's been really fun doing that. And we started doing some work in education, just looking at like, how could we start to bring purpose mindset, which is a concept I developed a number of years ago, sort of this purpose versus transactional mindset, because we've found that it was an incredible predictor of whether or not someone was fulfilled. If people fundamentally see life through the lens of purpose versus transactions. And a lot of the problems in our society can be linked back to our schools, I believe, teaching transactional mindset instead of purpose mindset. And I think in the age of AI, transactional mindset is going to be far less valuable. It's our ability to be human, which ties to the purpose mindset that's going to be critical to our well-being.
Wow. What's your purpose at the moment? Or has it always stayed the same?
Yeah, I mean, my purpose is, there's different ways of talking about it. I mean, my poetic version is to awaken lions so they can care for their pride. So what that's about is really just, I like to help leaders become courageous and to be able to truly lead from purpose so that they can better care for their team and society. I am operating at a societal level. I get very little sense of joy out of helping individuals or organizations. For me, I need to really feel like the work I'm doing is a sort of at a societal movement level. So I've really been about, and all my work tends to be about creating movements that are about activating people to be more courageous in their lives and in society.
Wow, so you much prefer the many versus the one, is that what you said?
Yeah, it's a societal view. So it's like I need to really feel and get excited about something. I need to feel like it's part of a broader change in society. It's not just about helping a person or helping a company like that. Those generally don't get me very excited. I've done some coaching myself, and I generally don't get a whole lot of joy out of just one-on-one coaching. I want to build systems that would enable thousands, if not millions of people to see the benefits.
Is there something you could suggest to some of my learners and other people watching this, if they don't even know what their purpose is, where they start? Like you suggested a book before, I think, or is there a process that's simple to follow? Or
yeah, I mean, I think the simplest version, there's a couple of things I'd recommend. The first one is just catalog your values and strengths. That's a really easy, simple place to start. If you look at your top 2 or 3 values and top 2 or 3 strengths, that's sort of a really rough draft, I would say, of starting to get towards your purpose. Then I would look at catalog, like when have you felt on a small scale, like the work you're doing or whatever you're doing made an impact. And if you catalog like the last 10 times or maybe the next 10 times that you actually like went home feeling like, I did something that really mattered today, you'll see a pattern emerge in what moments stand out to you as a source of purpose. So that's a really useful exercise. Another one is just asking the question, what do I do for a living and why does it matter? And then just keep on asking why until you get to the root of why you believe whatever you do matters. That also reveals a lot. And there's many other exercises. I am not dogmatic about it. I think a lot of people have developed like a protocol. I think there's different processes that help different people get to that truth for themselves. So I try to be flexible on that.
have you ever done any work or seen the work of Martin Seligman and the VIA Character Strength Survey?
Yep. It's great work there. Yeah, I was talking to someone over there earlier this year. I think, and I've referenced him a number of times in my book, The Purpose Economy. I think that there's definitely some connections there. I mean, I think a lot of these purpose to me that's useful is just, it's a lot about self-awareness and knowing like what really fulfills you. I think a lot of people think purpose is about a cause. And I think one of the things that we really discovered is that purpose is not about a cause. There's a lot of people with causes who have no meaning or fulfillment in their lives.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people with jobs that have no cause that are deeply fulfilled. And we tend to think in our society that you need a cause to be able to be fulfilled. And that's one of the key drums I beat, is just helping people let go of that and just realize purpose really is much more about sort of how you innately seek to add value in the world. And it should be something that applies to every aspect of your life, not just to work. So if you have a purpose that only applies to work, the odds are it's not organic and authentic, for example.
Right. So it should be more, yeah, like you said, personal to all areas of your life, not just work.
Well, it's broader than that. I think if you actually believe in purpose, you have to believe that it's biological in nature, which means if you have a purpose that wouldn't have made sense 2,000 years ago or 2,000 years from now, it's not authentic, because it can't just be a human construct. It has to be something that's much more sort of ornate or like organic to who you are.
Yeah.
Does that follow?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great.
So,
Well, appreciate your time today. I know you're a busy
yeah, my
man.
pleasure. My
Is there
pleasure.
any way, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
LinkedIn's always a good bet. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's probably my primary means of interaction with the world. And feel free to follow, DM, connect, post there pretty regularly. So look forward to hearing from folks.
Okay. Well, thanks again, and might see you in the future, Nerd.
Sounds good, Chris.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, cheers.